Today we're taking a look at audio. I've learned a lot over the years with this YouTube channel. I really do more video than I do photography, even though the channel is mostly about photography, because there's just so much to the video stuff. There's a lot of time that goes into it. So we're going to look at all of the different microphones that I've used, have on hand, and also the software side of things. With equipment, positioning, having sound treatment, things like that are very important. We have a microphone right up here. We have a storm in the background, if you can hear it. When I do talking videos, what I do with my audio is I have another one of these Cardioid microphones facing downward, just out of frame. And it comes up on a cable. Got the arm, actually hooks into this big shelving unit that I have. And then here's the actual camera down here. Talk about these foam pieces. These are not great, but they do something, at least a little bit. You want to have a whole bunch if you're going to go with something cheap like this. I also have a similar one on here. These are also probably too thin, but a different type. And maybe I'll eventually get more of them. But they are better than nothing. They do something, at least, at the very least. And just blankets and things. So I have them covering, trying to block some of the reverb. Now it's not sound deadening, it's just reverb reduction. This is my newer setup, another Cardioid microphone, super cheap one. Here we have an M50 with a shotgun microphone, very narrow pickup pattern. Also the Zoom H1 recorder. This is very wide, it has two microphones and they're split stereo. Comes out maybe 180 degrees, rotates around to the front. Also a standard Cardioid microphone. These are the ones that I use most of the time. So it just comes out more narrow, not super directional, but enough that it works decently well. Another one to consider are lapel microphones. In this case, I have a little recorder that can go with it. You put the microphone in this general area and then you'll put this in your pocket. The one negative with lapel microphones is that you get some shirt noise and things like that sometimes. I'm going to do a quick test with these cameras, all the sound, see how it works. Here's a quick test with all the different microphones. I have the lapel on, we have the shotgun microphone, in the center we have the Zoom, and also we have this Cardioid microphone. The nice thing about this one on the end is it does not need batteries. These two do need batteries. This is a AA. So this one actually with the recorder, of course the recorder needs batteries. So generally the closer you are to the microphone the better. However, you don't want to get too close because a lot of microphones will peak. You don't want that. I use manual levels on my cameras usually. With these Cardioid microphones I'm about 50% on the M50. If I get too close, you hear popping sounds that are not good. With the microphones, you're basically peaking. That's not a good thing. If you get too far away from the microphones, it won't sound great, but you get closer and closer and closer and closer, it should sound quite a bit better. If you go to the side a little bit, then you have less risk of peaking, which is good. Another important aspect of what I do is not talk for a few seconds, at least if not longer, so I can have a sample to do noise reduction on. You can hear the storm maybe in the background, which is pretty loud. I'm going to not talk for a few seconds and I'll attempt to remove that in post. You can hear the storm maybe in the background, which is pretty loud. I'm going to not talk for a few seconds and I'll attempt to remove that in post. Alright, now we're going to try to edit some of those talking portions that I did previously. We'll do a few different clips here. Let's take one into the video editor, which is Magix Vegas Pro 15. And then just drag that into timeline. You can see when I have it set to 50% levels, it's still not super loud. But I want to go in here and do a quick normalize on that footage, just to make it work properly. Let's get an idea of what I would normally do here. I would just clip some of this stuff out. With audio, I think some of the most important. So we just take pieces out. Let's say this area. You get the idea where you're just trying to make it cleaner. I would definitely not be going this quick. That should be good. This back portion here is where we want that silent, clean background ambient noise to use. And then from here I would export as a WAV file, just pulling the audio from the source video file. So I have one set up 48 kilohertz 32-bit. That's the raw audio fully clipped in the video editor. It's pretty quick usually. And then go into Audacity. Now I skin this, it's darker. I prefer the darker applications. And some customizations, which I'll get to. Actually have this guy here, which is basically a numpad that I put little labels on, and it works as a numpad. And I just have some different setups for just Audacity. I've got zoom in, zoom out, zoom, normal, normalize, repair. If I can even read my own things. But I use compress, normalize, equalization, noise reduction, repeat. So quite a few little things here that just make it faster for me to edit. Of course, you can go to the menus. You can see all of my settings on the screen. Numpad 6, numpad 1, 2, for those things. And then drag in that fixed up audio. What I do here is I go individually to some of the peaks that are really extreme. I'm going to use my little numpad, but you'll get the idea. So zoom in, go into this peak. I select just the edges of it. Then go into Normalize, which is in Effects, Normalize. I do usually, it depends on your setup, but in my case, -5 dB. So you can see that peak is much lower. I zoom out again. I look for another one. Now I'm just doing this just to the specific ones that are really extreme peaks. Then go into Normalize again. I do this pretty quick. So with this one, I might take this entire thing, or I might take just that area. That generally looks okay. So we're just gonna go with that. And then what I do next is a compressor on my little numpad, or also in the menus, Effect Compressor. Oh, you have to select all the stuff first, so I do Control A on the keyboard. Or you can just go like that, pull up the compressor. And these are the settings that I have in here. I don't change them. Probably not great, but I usually do all this just for the talking portions. It depends, but so we got -18 dB for the threshold, noise floor -30, ratio 2:1, takt time 0.5 seconds, release time 1 second. Compresses everything down to make it more equalized. And then I do a normalize to -1. So now we're more equalized. Now I'm going to actually use an actual equalization filter. See these peaks here? That's what I have it set, because from what I have learned, whether it's perfectly true or not, that's where the human voice is centered. So we want these peaks and we don't want a lot of the other stuff. Just run that. And in this case, we can tell that we're very much peaking in a lot of areas. We're going to do another normalize, -1. So at that point, we're going to do a noise reduction. The challenge here is listening to your noise, your ambient sound. You don't want weird noises that might have happened, like a click and anything like that. So I'm going to delete some of these peaks that don't look proper to background noise. And a lot of the time I turn up my audio. Just be careful so you don't try to play the standard audio at the same time. You'll mess yourself up. But I turn up my audio and listen to the noise, and I delete stuff that I don't like. So I just heard myself move around or something. I just heard myself breathe. So that's a really bad sample. We're just gonna have to go with it. But in general, I delete little pieces that don't sound right. What you want to do is select that sample for background noise. Go into noise reduction. You have to get the noise profile first, and then select the entire clip. Control A on the keyboard just to zoom out. You can see the entire thing is selected. Then you pull up noise reduction again. In this case, I have these settings for it, so I'm trying to make it not sound super weird. But noise reduction, we've got 15 dB, sensitivity 1.5, frequency smoothing 12 bends, and reduce. So at that point, the audio should be good enough to re-import. Background, which is pretty loud. I think some of the most important things are: 1, positioning of the microphone. In this case, I'm going to export as a WAV file. Then pull this back into the video editor. Go here. Drag that in. Whoops. I have a setting on that shifts the clips. So with this little auto ripple, you have to turn that off. Pull the clip in. So you can't edit your video after this until you've re-imported the audio, because then it'll be not aligned, and that's not good. And then usually what I do is delete my old audio. Of course, I'm saving the project as I go, different files. So if I mess something up, I can still go back to a previous save. Just delete these. So now we have good enough audio. Some of the most important things are: 1, positioning of the microphone, 2, sound treatment in your space. Of course, we're talking vocal. It's actually not bad. It was raining pretty loud, which doesn't give a great sample. Otherwise, you have to pick out little sections. So at that point, you might want to clip things up again a little bit more, but of course you have to either link these clips together or just be careful when you're moving stuff around so that your voice doesn't shift in comparison to the video that is in there. Of course, all that depends on what editor you're using. In this case, Magix Vegas. You can use whatever. It's all the same for the most part. That is the extent of my editing for audio. It really depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going to do clips of outdoors, indoors, I might put them on different tracks so that I can edit them differently in Audacity. Sometimes I don't edit them in Audacity. If the outdoor stuff is good enough, there's no way to do noise reduction on outdoor stuff because the ambient is changing constantly. So I would take pieces of it, edit, and then do a big bulk edit of audio in the end. That way it's all equalized and normalized, compressed, all the same amount. There's a lot to it, but you get used to it once you figure out a process that works for you. Anyways, I'm Scott Photography Bonsai. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.